okay, so you kind of tossed off an aside a few minutes ago about ambition as being a kind of prerequisite to success in probably any business, but certainly in the music business. So, I often get the thing, so we're a label, who are we going to hire to do press? It's like, who you're going to hire? You, because it's your label. And, only when you have done it for a while could you actually make an educated assumption that someone could do it better than you.
Right.
And who's going to know your band better than you? Some publicist. So, this is, again, going back to truisms, irrespective of time. You're a band out there, you're going to need press. You're going to wait around to save up the money to hire some dodgy publicist that can, care about you for the 2 months that you pay her to do, or you're going to figure out a way to do it yourself. And then that leads to something else. And the ambition, again, is, okay, the job starts tomorrow at 10 and you're in, 2 hours away and you find your way there.
That's right.
And you do it gladly, kind of. I mean, you don't regret that move.
No, not at all.
Mean, if you had not shown up at 10 a.m., what was the next step?
The pay for that job was $200 a week. My take-home pay, I remember, was $149.85. But oddly enough, it led to me signing, specifically the Moody Blues, which had a #1 album, and Peter Gabriel, which helped keep me employed. Yeah. So probably taking that Howard Bloom job probably earned me $1 million now that I think about it, and I hadn't thought about it that way till this moment.
Well, I mean, I've long said that it is your nothing left to lose moments that define your life.
There you go.
Right? So you're at this moment when the label's just not working anymore. I got $25. Dude's calling me up who I don't really know saying, come to New York. I got nothing left to lose. And that path, leads to Peter Gabriel.
That's right. I did know the dude, though, because even though I was a writer of no significance, but to him, of all the publicists in the universe, to him, I was, I might as well have been Norman Mailer.
Well, you had a voice, right? And I cringe only because he just passed the other day. But again, I go back to this idea of the blogs. If you have that voice as a blogger today, amidst, I don't know what the stat is, but it's something like 400 blogs are started every second. You can emerge.
Oh yeah, no question.
You can emerge, and these quote unquote gatekeepers, which Howard was of a sort, will notice you if you do consistently good work with a voice, and that's what.
Well, if you're talent has a way of making itself known,
But talent comes. Yeah, I mean, you can be passionate about something, and if you suck, you should find something else to be passionate about.
Exactly.
So you need to combine your passion with something you can do well. But okay, so lead us to Peter Gabriel from being a publicist.
It's a long story. I don't know how much tape you have.
Well,
but
see if you can.
Yeah, I'll do my best.
I'll do my best. Version.
Well, the abridged version is at this agency, the Howard Bloom organization. I was given some clients. Howard never had the A-level clients, but for example, he didn't have the Moody Blues, but he had the journeyman keyboard player from the Moody Blues, whose name was Patrick Moraz, a fantastic guy and a really good musician. But and he didn't have Peter Gabriel. He had the synthesizer wizard from Peter Gabriel, whose name was Larry Fast. So these were my clients, Patrick Moraz, Larry Fast. But by virtue of having them as clients, I got to know the whole organization that they were associated with. So ultimately what happened, because I am making it short, ultimately what happened is I do hold the record probably still for getting in and out of the Howard Bloom organization the fastest, which was 7 months, when the Columbia Records press department made a spot for me. I mean, because I was a kid journalist, I knew all the publicity departments and all the people that ran all the publicity departments. It was all one big happy fluid family of people. So they knew I was at Bloom, and they conspired to find a way to bring me to Columbia.
Okay, so again, I'm sorry to keep interrupting you, but I'm trying to. I mean, these things kind of, you pass them off as just of course, but there's kind of embedded lessons in each of them. So getting to Howard Bloom allowed you to establish this whole range of contacts, and I think
establish skills as a publicist. Now, mind you, I always thought publicist was something that you had to have removed surgically. I never wanted to be a publicist, like
sales guy or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So, but yeah, I mean, I was thrown into suddenly from being a writer to begging writers to do your bidding. You know, that was the
and I think one of the lessons is I hear a lot from people that want to be in the industry, either as professionals or in bands. They say, but you know, how do I make these contacts? You know, it's all, if the business is all about contacts and talent or whatever. Go to the place where you can make contacts. I mean, Dylan had to, right?
He came. He left Minnesota.
He left Hibbing, Minnesota to go there. You know, Kurt Cobain had to. Why are you above it? And the other option is to build it yourself, which I think is viable. Saddle Creek has done it. Sub Pop has done it.
That's
and
right.
you know, again, the barriers of entry are lower. You can establish your little network, but you kind of have two options. Either you build it yourself, which is typically harder, or you go to the action. So again, that segue from wherever you were to Howard Bloom was more than just about the $200 a week. It opened up.
Oh yeah, it was also get to the big city.
Get to the big city.
That was part of it.
And your point that you're only there for 7 months, I think, is also very true for people that. I mean, was that your first kind of real job? Okay. So often, I think these first real jobs are transition jobs. They get you to the big city, and then you go elsewhere.
Yeah, that's exactly what it did. So then I was at Columbia Records, and the fortuitous thing that happened then was the head of promotion at Columbia Records, a fabulous guy named Bob Sherwood, decided he would fall in love and marry one of the publicity women named Carol Bork. Carol was a big fan of mine for a long time. She was instrumental in bringing me to Columbia. One day, Polygram phoned up Bob Sherwood and suggested that he should become the president of Mercury Records. Right. And Polygram was so off the radar at the time that I remember Carol asking me, you know, what exactly a polygram was, you know, because certainly if you worked at CBS Records, you were above looking, you know, whatever polygram might be. Right. It was something over on 8th Avenue, you know, like who would be there? So Bob decided he was going to take that job, and a short couple of weeks afterwards, he called. He had to move to Chicago. They were still based in Chicago, and he called up and said, "So, Sport, you ever think you want to be an A&R man?" You know,
Sport.
Yeah, and
yes, Captain.
I flew out there in secret on a Saturday to Chicago to have my job interview. And I came back a newly appointed A&R director.
Yes. Yeah, and that's an interesting point too. I mean, it's not like you go to school to become an A&R person. You can certainly go to music industry programs, but you can't major in A&R. You know, so I think your path is probably not dissimilar to other people that became. I mean, you come to A&R in very kind of strange ways, but always by having some demonstrable taste. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's always either you're signing your friends' bands, you're writing about your friends' bands, but you have to have some demonstrable.
I think it's taste, passion, industriousness, a bit of hustle.
Stupidity.
Yeah.
Okay, so that leads us to Peter Gabriel at that point because.
Well, the way that happened, see, you're going to think this is serendipitous, and it was. One day, Sherwood calls me from Chicago, and he says that the Moody Blues are available. Mercury Records was in a very interesting situation at this moment in time. They were considered to be on their ass. Can I say that? And but oddly enough, their roster was fantastic. And none of it had happened yet. They had Kool and the Gang. They had Rush, the Scorpions, Def Leppard, John Cougar Mellencamp. Whoever else, right? But they all had not had their hits yet. Okay, so Mercury was struggling to sell records, and the Moody Blues were also struggling to sell records. They had put out an album. If you really research it, I think the album was called Octave, and it was their worst-selling thing ever. And they were touring behind it, and they'd been booked into Madison Square Garden, where I think they sold 2,200 tickets or whatever. That's the tour I was publicizing.
Oh, nice, yeah.
Okay,
that's
so I was with them through this awful period, and but Bob calls up and says the Moody Blues are available, and you know we need name product here on our roster. So I'm flying to London to talk to them about signing them. And I said, well, when you get there, say hi to Patrick and Justin and John.
Connection.
And he said,
You know them.
you know these guys? I said, oh, more than well, you know.
I've suffered through
I can't,
indignities with them that I care not to speak of.
That's right. I can't actually tell you all the tales. But suffice it to say, he said, pack your bags, you're with me on the Concorde in the morning. Mm-hmm. And we flew to London, and when I walked in the room, Patrick, God bless him, jumped up and yelled, Peter, my friend, what are you doing here? And I said, well, I'm an A&R man now. Justin, John, we must sign with him. He is the greatest. This is our Peter, And we did a deal for them.
You were their knight in white satin.
Yeah, yeah. We did a deal for the Moody Blues. Right. On the same trip, the #1 single in England that week was a record called Games Without Frontiers by Peter Gabriel. Peter Gabriel, that was on his 3rd solo album. He was an Atlantic recording artist for his first 2 solo albums. And he had delivered this album to Atlantic, and his A&R guy, John Kolodner,
oh, Mr. Kolodner,
had deemed the record commercially unacceptable.
This is which record, I'm sorry?
This
is the 3rd one, the Games
album.
of Frontier record.
Right.
Okay.
And surprisingly or not surprisingly, I don't really know which, because Atlantic passed on this album and dropped Peter Gabriel, no other label in America would sign him. He languished sort of out there in the marketplace for a very long time. Long enough that the record came out in England and was #1.
Right.
When me and Bob happened to be riding in a taxi cab and it came on the radio. So I said to Bob, you like this record? And Bob says, what is this record? I've heard it at the hotel, I've heard it in the cab, I heard it on the street, I heard it coming out of the shops. It's everywhere. I said, well, that's because it's the #1 record it's the #1 record in the country. Right. It's Peter Gabriel. Now, I had gotten to know the head of Peter Gabriel's label by working at Howard Bloom. Right. And I said, listen, Bob, Tony Stratton Smith, who runs Charisma Records, right now it's 5 o'clock.
He's at this pub.
He is on Wardour Street sipping a beer. What's the name of that place? I can't remember the club. But anyway.
Frog and Perkin or something.
Let's call it the Frog and Perkin. Right now, Strat is at the Frog and Perkin. But, is quaffing his first beer of the afternoon. And if we go over there and we tell him we want this record, I'll bet you anything we can get it. And Bob, God bless him, he says, Cabby, let's go to Wardour Street. We go, and Tony is sitting there drinking a beer. And I said, Tony, Peter, my lad, what are you doing here? Well, I brought the president of Mercury Records, and he's got something to say to you. And Bob, right on cue, he says, Tony, I love this Peter Gabriel record. I'd be honored to release it in America. And mid-sip, Tony says, well, I've just been sitting here waiting for someone to walk in and say those very words. So, within the 3 hours, we signed the Moody Blues and Peter Gabriel to Mercury Records. And the Moody Blues made a record that was called Long Distance Voyager. And it went to #1. #1.
The #1, yeah.